two other questions around Bitcoin. I guess one is like, do you think it could rise to become the global reserve currency? And whether that's 50, 100, even 500 years from now, like, is the expectation that there would be decentralized money as the core unit of account and kind of store value globally? Or do you think that we'll just get more and more fragmentation and there'll be fiat currencies, there'll be decentralized currency like Bitcoin? Maybe there's even these private currencies that some of these companies have tried to create. Like, how do you think this plays out?
It's hard to know. I mean, Balaji's got this framework where there's basically only three currencies that have scale. One is the USD, sort of the USD American empire. Then there's China, the renminbi, and then there's Bitcoin in the sort of crypto world. And he thinks those are the only three currencies that can get to sufficient scale to be some sort of world reserve currency. I don't know what happens. I mean, I think the question is, can you get to something where Bitcoin is widely used without there being like basically a US dollar collapse or something catastrophic happening? Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that. I think there are sort of middle scenarios where, if you're in a country that had that with like a totalitarian government or something like that, or had export controls, or was extremely repressive, or is being invaded, going through a war, you'd want to move as much of your net worth into Bitcoin as you could, despite the price volatility, because it's portable. You could take it with you. So in that, it's the new diamonds, it's the new gold bars, whatever. So there's sort of that store value argument, even short of it being a fiat currency. But I think it's interesting. It's what we're talking about. I didn't coin this phrase, but the separation of money and state. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, that would be as big an event as the separation of church and state. The church and state used to be intrinsically linked and combined. You couldn't really think about the two without them being together. Now we think about them being separate. I think money and state is kind of like that. We can't really think of money without the state, but Bitcoin, it's sort of this like sci-fi future where you could maybe have these two things decoupled. I don't know how long that takes. I don't, and it's very hard to know like what price you should put on that, which is why I don't like actively speculate on it, because I just don't know what the price level should be. Yeah.
Do you still buy Bitcoin like over time, just as like, hey, I'm just dollar cost averaging, or is this something where, hey, I bought some early on, that's what I got, and I'm going to go focus on SaaS investing, or like how do you think about it?
Yeah, so I have a position in it, and my view is kind of to set it and forget it. I've seen so many ups and downs at this point that I'm just like, look, I'm going to put this amount of money in Bitcoin, and it's some percentage of my net worth. I'm just going to leave it alone, and maybe it'll be worth nothing, but maybe this will become new money over the next 20 years, and in which case I'll feel really stupid if I didn't buy in at a much earlier stage. So I've kind of got like a little piece there, and I just leave it alone and don't try to figure out like these price moves.
Last thing on Bitcoin is there's a very large portion of people in the Bitcoin crypto world that are Bitcoin maximalists. And so they believe, hey, Bitcoin is the only thing, everything else is a shitcoin, it's all going to zero. I don't think you're in that category given some of the investments I know that you've made. What is your argument for or against kind of that maximalistic view when it comes to something like money? Is it something that you understand, but you're like, hey, I'm an investor and I want to go also find productive assets? Is it something where you're like, I don't understand, that view of the world? Just talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a maximalist. I think that the case for Bitcoin is probably the strongest of all the cryptos, and the price and relative stability reflects that. But look, you have, in the process of creating Bitcoin, you have these other new technologies arise, like the blockchain itself, and why couldn't you use that to support other, innovations? And so the most obvious one being, the idea of a smart contract platform. And so now you have kind of these other cryptos that function as gas to basically buy computing power on a smart contract platform, like Ethereum, like Solana. That's the space. And then there's all the various applications that potentially could be run on a blockchain, which mainly you've seen in terms of ones that have scale is mostly just DeFi. It's mostly financial contracts of various kinds and financial speculation. I think what remains to be seen is what is the breadth of the applications that can ultimately be built on top of blockchains. But I think part of in the exuberance over these types of platforms, I think there's like too many things that actually don't really make a lot of sense. Where no, you're just better off using a centralized database. So the breadth still remains to be seen. But I think what's interesting is just the financial contracts, the settlement system, the way that you could do derivatives, things like that. It's so much more transparent than what you could get on Wall Street, where they're giving you these like OTC derivatives where you don't really understand what they are. At least with the blockchain, with DeFi, you can inspect the code. So it does seem like a better way to do trading. And we'll see where it evolves to from here. But I guess the thing I'm not totally sure about is the range of applications that are ultimately going to emerge.